Right. Hello. Good evening, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. My name's John Parker. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at the Arboricultural Association here in cold and frosty Stonehouse in the UK. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all back for another exciting series of Wednesday webinars. Please say hello in the chat. Some of you are already doing that. Let us know where you're watching from. It's always fantastic to see where you all are and to get our international community back together after a few months away. Tonight, we're going to be hearing all about Arbor Day, firstly from Dan Lambe at the Arbor Day Foundation, and then from Charlotte Bancroft at Myesco. But before we get into all of that, for once, I can actually tell you about some of the webinars we have coming up for the rest of the series. That's right, I've done some planning. I've tried to organize things for once. I'm very excited. We're going to see how that turns out. Next week, December the 21st, we're going to have a Christmas special with Chris Knappman. Chris is going to be talking about the aesthetic, biological and cultural value of trees, and I can tell you for sure that's going to be a very exciting festive treat. The following week, December the 28th, we're not having a webinar because me and all of my little team of Christmas elves will be off doing other things like delivering presents and bringing joy and happiness around the world. Then on January the 4th, it's a Thinking Arb special with Ted Green, Reg Harris and friends looking at retrenchment pruning. January the 11th, we're off to Czechia to hear about the European standards from Jarek Kolarek and tree planting with Martin Tusa. January the 18th, we've got soil with Claire Harbison and Simon Parfy. January the 25th is trees and the law with Charles Miners and Liz Nichols. February the 1st will be Sharon Hollenby and Luke Fay to talk about trees in the planning process and the latest document from the Trees and Design Action Group. And then there's a few more webinars after that, which I haven't quite organized. I know you've already forgotten all that information, but I've actually put some effort in for once. So I'm very excited and I wanted to share that just to prove I am capable of planning ahead. So much to enjoy, all free and delivered thanks to the wonders of technology direct to your face. Hurrah! And there's a link to the all new webinar page that my colleague Andrew's looking after the webinars now, by the way. Thank you, Andrew. Andrew will put a link to that in the chat and you can register for any of those webinars that tickle your fancy right now. In other good news, we've been working with our colleagues at the International Society of Arboriculture, the ISA, and we've pre-registered this webinar and all of the other webinars for CEUs. So I'll be giving out a CEU code later on, which you can use to claim your 1.5 hours of continuous professional development. So on to business. It's my very great pleasure to be able to welcome Dan Lambe from the Arbor Day Foundation. Dan is a very busy chap. We're not his only webinar today. No. He's got lots of things to do. So the plan is Dan's going to do his presentation. We're going to ask a couple of questions if we've got time. Then Dan's going to leave us and then we're going to move on to Charlotte's presentation. So if you've got any questions for Dan, please submit them using the Q&A button. Don't do it in the chat because I'll lose track of it. Q&A button, please do it during Dan's presentation. Don't wait until right at the end because Dan will have gone. So please use Q&A button for any questions for Dan. So without further ado, Dan, over to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I am Dan Lambe. I'm president and CEO of the Arbor Day Foundation, and I am genuinely thrilled to be with you. Thanks for the invitation to be with you. Thanks for all you do at the Arboriculture Association, John. It was great to meet you in Sweden this last year, but I'm well aware of all the things that the Arboriculture Association does, not only to support professionalism and tree planting and tree care across the UK, but really connecting with a more global audience. So it's exciting to be with you. And I've got some comments. I've got a PowerPoint deck I'm going to share. Hopefully they're beautiful pictures that will be inspiring for everybody. But I am also, so I'm going to walk through who we are at the Arbor Day Foundation. I'm going to share a little bit about our work, what we do, how we do it. I'm going to emphasize one of our programs called Tree Cities of the World. And then I'm going to share what's next for the Arbor Day Foundation. We're looking at what's next. How are we growing as an organization with our community and our partners? So if everyone would bear with me for just a second. And I just want to remind everybody that I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and excited to help answer any kind of questions you may have. But also, I invite you to connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn, either way. But here's my Twitter handle. So if anybody wants to connect on Twitter, I love following what other people are doing and being able to celebrate and amplify that. So, and I've been at the Arbor Day Foundation, just so you know, for 18 years. And I've been president for the last 9, was named CEO in January. So it's exciting. everything at the Arbor Day Foundation starts with our mission. Our mission is that we inspire people to plant, nurture, and celebrate trees. And that's what we do every single day in all kinds of different ways. And it's a great job. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but we were founded in 1972. The Arbor Day Foundation was founded in 1972 on the 100th anniversary of the very first Arbor Day. And Arbor Day was founded in 1872 in Nebraska in the United States. I am visiting with you today from our corporate headquarters in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is right smack in the middle of the United States. But we have a beautiful 300-acre farm with orchards and trails, a hotel and conference center at Arbor Day Farm in Nebraska City, Nebraska, which is where Arbor Day was officially founded in 1872. It quickly became a state holiday, a national holiday, and now Arbor Day is celebrated all around the world. And what's interesting about it is Arbor Day was founded not as a holiday to celebrate the beauty of trees, which is, I think, what a lot of people think about it today. It was really started because in Nebraska, back in 1872, there were no trees. The residents of Nebraska wanted trees. They wanted the beauty of trees, but they also needed fence posts. They needed the nuts and berries. They didn't want to live in houses made of sod and grass anymore. They wanted to have sustainable resources that come from trees. And so that's why Arbor Day was started in Nebraska. It was out of necessity and pragmatism as opposed to just celebrating beauty. And I think Arbor Day today is celebrated for all kinds of reasons, but we're excited. In anyone who's done the quick math knows that this is our 50th anniversary at the Arbor Day Foundation. 2022 has been a big year for us, a fun year to celebrate, a fun year to reflect on all that's happened at the Arbor Day Foundation and how we've grown over the years. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But our vision, which we introduced several years ago at the foundation, is we want to lead towards a world where trees are used to solve issues critical to survival by relentlessly delivering value. Our value proposition at the Arbor Day Foundation is we want to make sure trees are seen as a must-have, not just a nice-to-have. And our work has never been more important than it is today, because anyone who has picked up a newspaper or opened up a news app on your smartphone or your computer knows that we've got big challenges out there. We have increasing frequency and severity of natural disasters that are damaging and destroying critical tree canopy in our cities and towns. We have intense, excessive temperatures that are taking a toll not just on tree canopy and trees in our cities and communities and forests, but also on our people. We've got extreme drought. We've got historic fires burning across not just the United States, but everywhere around the world, damaging and destroying critical forests. And this list, unfortunately, goes on and on and on. And that is why we say, if ever there was a time to be planting trees, now is that time. If ever there was a moment for the work that we do at the Arbor Day Foundation, but the work that the Arboriculture Association does, the work that all of you do, planting trees, caring for trees, nurturing trees, and maintaining trees, now is that time. It is the time for trees, and we are collectively in a very exciting place to do something about it. Okay, so at the Arbor Day Foundation, we have our programs, which I'll get into, but one of the things we talk a lot about is our impact. How are we making an impact with the trees that we are a part of planting and that we're inspiring others to plant with? And there's a story I like to share that helps to define what we at the Arbor Day Foundation mean by impact. And it is a story about a boy, a rock, and a lake. And I don't know how many of you grew up camping as kids or how many of you still camp, but I grew up camping as a kid. This story is not about me, but anyone who's been camping knows that when you take off camping, this boy got into the family car. They were all loaded up to go camping. They found their camping spot in this huge park, and everyone has a job to do once you find your camping site, whether it's to get the tent up, the camper ready, get the coolers out, whatever your job is, everyone's got a job to do. And this little boy gets bored, and so he just takes off on a walk to explore this park where they're camping. And he comes upon this big lake, this huge body of water, and he walks up to the shore and he looks down and he finds rocks. And so what does any little boy or any little girl do when they see rocks and water? He reaches down, grabs the biggest rock he can find, and he rears back and just throws it as far as he can. And he watches and he watches, and then splash, this huge splash. And he turns around and runs back to get his brothers and sisters to come throw the rest of the rocks in. What he didn't do was wait to watch the ripples and the waves that rock created. At the Arbor Day Foundation, when we're building programs, when we're building relationships, we are not looking for the splash. We're looking to create ripples and waves of enduring, lasting programs and relationships that are going to make a difference for years and years to come. We don't want the overnight headline. We're not looking for the one night wonder. We want to make sure we're building programs, projects, and relationships that are making a difference for years and years to come. So that's how we manage and push ourselves to be disciplined. And our programs show up in urban and community forestry in one big way. We do that through recognition programs. Throughout the ecosystem of urban forestry, we have different recognition programs like Tree City, like Tree Campus, like the Tree Line program, programs that are recognizing and celebrating cities or healthcare campuses or colleges and university campuses or electric utility companies who are managing and caring for their urban forests by meeting core standards of care. We engage with a lot of professional arborists in this work, but also a lot of volunteer tree care leaders helping to manage and encourage best practices in urban and community forestry. We do a lot of work with organizations like Arboricultural the Association, but also like the International Society of Arboriculture and many others to do this work. We also have a long history of planting trees on forest lands that have been degraded or damaged because of fire, disease, insects, or otherwise. We have planted millions and millions of trees around the world, including in the past several years, almost 1.5 million trees in the United Kingdom with partners like the Woodland Trust, Trees for Cities, the County Forest Trust, and others. We've got great partners in the UK and elsewhere around the world. And at the Arbor Day Foundation, we see ourselves not as the experts in getting the trees in the ground, but oftentimes the connectors, helping to find leaders and experts who are doing good work and connecting them to create an amplification of that work. And this is a map of the United States, which shows a whole bunch of stuff, but let me try and explain it to you. Each dot on this map represents a program or a project or a partnership of the Arbor Day Foundation. And it really speaks to the network that we strive to connect. These are cities, these are nonprofit organizations, these are forest projects on public land and private land, they're disaster recovery projects. This is the work of the Arbor Day Foundation showing up on the ground. And now we see this more and more on a global stage. We have projects and partnerships in more than 50 countries around the world, helping to advance urban and community forestry and helping to restore critical forest lands through replanting and more through verified forestry carbon projects. So connectors, that's a big part of what we do. We try to help to connect the dots in the forestry space to make sure people are having success in the work. But a big part of the work we do also, as we mentioned, is inspiration. We try to just inspire people to plant trees. We've got about 1 million members who are active tree planters, working in their communities to plant trees in their front yards and backyards, in parks and other spaces. But our mission, as I mentioned earlier, is inspiring people to plant, nurture, and celebrate trees. And what's great about this is pretty much everybody loves trees. I mean, you might run into some people every now and then who will complain about having to rake leaves and how trees can drop things that have got to be picked up, but people love trees. And it seems like everybody's got a story to share, a story about maybe the first tree they ever planted with their parents or their grandparents or their grandkids, or a tree they planted at their school. It seems like everybody's got a tree story that they can share. Even as I'm talking about this right now, you might be thinking of a significant tree in your life that causes a memory or just some nostalgia for you. And I've got a tree story, and I'll share it with you. This is my tree. This is the house I grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska, on South 39th Street. And it was a great place to grow up with my siblings and my parents. And this is the massive pin oak tree that we had in our front yard. It was by far and is the largest tree in the neighborhood. I think it's about 60 feet tall, 70 feet tall, but it dominated the landscape. And I completely took it for granted as a kid growing up. But it did so much for us. It helped every single day. We would walk out that front door, and that tree was there to welcome us and protect us. My mom tells a story about the reason she bought this house, wanted to convince my dad to buy this house, was because of this tree. She wanted a tree. This tree shaded our home. It did so much for us. I remember parking my bike under that tree with my buddies on hot summer days and just talking for hours using the shade of that tree. It just became part of our family. And matter of fact, it shows up in hundreds of family photos that we have, and I can prove it to you. Here is one of me on my way to my high school graduation with the pin oak tree behind me. I promise you I wasn't thinking about that pin oak tree. I was more worried about how my hair looked under my graduation cap, but it was just there. It was part of our life. And at the Arbor Day Foundation, we love stories about trees. We love that connection people have to trees, but we're looking to move beyond stories, beyond nostalgia, to action. We're looking to move beyond talking about a tree to what a tree can be. And a tree can be so many things today. A tree can be brave, standing tall on the front lines of our changing climate, helping to pull carbon from the air and literally protect shores and from flood surges, protecting lives and communities. A tree can be equitable. Not everybody grows up with a 60-foot tall pin oak tree in their front yard. Trees can help bring equity, fairness, and benefits to all communities. A tree can be unifying. In this contentious and divisive time we live in, trees might be the one thing that we all agree on as they connect communities and cultures and neighbors and generations. Trees are awesome. And we try and advance that through our programs, through our membership, et cetera. And one of the programs I really wanted to emphasize with you today is a program which you may have heard about. It's called Tree Cities of the World. Tree Cities of the World is a program we started just a few years ago in partnership with the United Nations Food and Ag Organization. And Tree Cities of the World is a program aimed at creating recognition for cities and city leadership in urban and community forestry. We've got great partners all around the world with FAO, but in the UK, we've had a special partnership with Trees for Cities, who've been wonderful collaborators in helping to build a network of urban forestry leaders in the UK. Now, any city or community that wants to be recognized as a tree city of the world has to meet core standards, base level standards that we think get a city on the path to a healthy, sustainable urban forest. And here are the 5 standards. It's about establishing responsibility, who's in charge of the trees. It's about setting the rules about how trees are going to be cared for. It's about knowing your resource, knowing what you have so that you can manage your urban forest resource. It's about making sure you're allocating dollars to your trees and your urban forests. And finally, of course, it's about celebrating those trees. We believe the Tree Cities of the World program can help increase recognition for the good work being done in urban forests in cities, celebrating that, building awareness, and ultimately bringing more inclusivity and more people to the party. And we didn't invent Tree Cities of the World out of the thin air. It's modeled after a program that we've been running in the United States called Tree City USA. And the year was 1976. The number one movie at the box office in the United States that year was Rocky. The number one song that year was Captain and Tennille's Love Will Keep Us Together, which is still a fantastic song. If you haven't listened to it lately, you should. But there's also a bold idea in 1976 to start a new national recognition program for cities for urban forestry called Tree City USA. And it was a partnership between the Arbor Day Foundation, the United States Forest Service, and the National Association of State Forestry Agencies. And it was really modest beginnings. In 1976, there were 42 cities recognized as Tree City USA communities. Today, there are more than 3,600 cities and towns recognized as Tree City communities, from Sibley, North Dakota, with about 20 people, to New York City with millions and millions of people. But it's created this peer group of sharing and connecting in urban and community forestry. And it's the backbone of urban forestry in the United States. We're excited to share that today, in 2021, we recognize 139 Tree City USA communities on 6 different continents in 21 different countries. And thanks to great work by partners like Trees for Cities, there are 19 cities in the UK that are recognized globally as Tree Cities of the World communities. We love working with these organizations in these cities and celebrating them. And if anyone is interested in figuring out how they can be a part of the Tree Cities of the World program and network, you can go to treecitiesoftheworld.org to learn more. So it's our 50th anniversary, and we had a great time looking back and celebrating all year long. It's been awesome, but we're leaning into the next 50 years and we're asking what's next. And I'll tell you, there are 2 guiding principles for us as we look at what's next. Our first guiding principle is focus. Where are we planting? How are we planting? What are we planting to make sure we have the greatest impact? And the second is scale. How are we helping to meet the demands today of the need for trees like never before? Those are our 2 guiding principles. We believe they're complementary. We believe the Arbor Day Foundation can be a big part of driving those principles. But we're asking ourselves, how are we pushing ourselves with a goal? What's the right goal for us? And as we've reflected on our first 50 years at the Arbor Day Foundation, we've been a part of planting and distributing more than 500 million trees, which is exciting. But our next goal, we're looking to double it down. We're committing this year on our 50th anniversary to do it all over again and plant another 500 million trees in the next 5 years. Those will be in front yards and backyards, critical forest lands, forestry carbon projects. We're not exactly sure how we're going to get it done, but we're tracking it, and we're excited to be using science and data to help guide where we go, how we plant, where we plant. We're excited to be following the climate and community and biodiversity ideals as we think about how we're making impact. We're excited about being in those neighborhoods that have been ignored and neglected that need trees. And of course, continuing our legacy of planting in forests that have been devastated with large-scale reforestation. But it is the time for trees. It is our time collectively. The work we are all doing has never been more important. And the reason we love working with organizations like the Arboricultural Association is because when we work with partners like the Arboricultural Association, Trees for Cities, and others, we know we're doing it the right way. It's the right tree, the right place, the right time, for the right need. And so we're thankful for all you do, thankful that we get to work with great partners like you and meet many people like you. We're excited about what's next for the Arbor Day Foundation, and thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this conversation. And with that, I will stop my sharing and happy to answer any kind of questions.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Dan. Cracking presentation to get our new Wednesday webinar series underway. How long have we got you for, Dan, before I start asking questions?
I got 5-10 minutes or something like that. Yeah.
Ah, perfect. We can get loads of questions in then. Right. So I've been looking at some questions I was going to ask, and then some other people have jumped in with other stuff I want to ask. One, Bill Anderson has asked, what's a tree equity score? It's a concept that's getting a bit of traction now, but could you maybe explain for the viewers what that means exactly?
You bet. So there's been a lot of attention paid to how are we helping to bring fairness back to neighborhoods that don't have high tree canopy. And if you look at the wealth screenings versus tree canopy screenings, it's oftentimes these underserved, neglected, lower income communities that don't have tree canopy. The tree equity, if you Google tree equity score, there's an organization called American Forest, which has created a wonderful tool to track how trees are showing up in cities and how tree canopy is linked to economic indicators. And that's an emphasis area around the globe to make sure those trees are getting planted where they're needed the most.
Thank you very much, Dan. We also had a session about green equity and some stuff about green gentrification as well at our recent amenity conference, and you can get those recordings online as well. So you want to get on there and watch some great presentations on there. Right, what was I going to look at then? While we're doing definitions, one from Madeline, which is what do you mean by an urban forest? Now, you use the term urban forest, and there's sometimes different meanings in different parts of the world, I find. So when you're using the term urban forest, what exactly are you meaning?
It's a really fair question, and I will be the first to admit that I'm pretty loose when I talk about urban forestry, because I don't only talk to the professional arborist community. I'm trying to bring as many people into our conversation as possible. So when I talk about community forests, urban forests, I mean everything like London, I mean Madrid, I mean Barcelona, I mean New York City, but I also mean tiny neighborhoods and communities. I mean, like I mentioned, Sibley, North Dakota, which has 20 people in it, but by gosh, they think of themselves as managing an urban and community forest. And so I mean forests in our cities and towns where people live, work, and play, and how we're getting trees and managing trees in those communities to provide the benefits that we know they bring.
Thank you very much. Okay, we've got a question from Chris Natman. I shouldn't really be letting Chris ask a question as he's got a whole webinar to himself next week, but I'm going to, because Chris is saying that nature is quite good at growing trees, yet we only value those trees, often only value those trees that we plant. So how do you see our role in enabling natural regeneration of treescapes and tree ecosystems alongside these planting initiatives?
Yeah, so that's a great point. Sometimes we have to plant. Sometimes forests have been burned so hot and for so long that they won't even naturally regenerate, and they need a kickstart. We need to see an acceleration because of the damage that can be caused without any kind of tree canopy. And even in cities and towns, sometimes we need to be planting. In Nebraska, you have to plant trees. It's not a great naturally forested area, as an example. But it's a great point that we also need to be managing our forests and keeping our forests as forests, whether that's in the traditional rural forest lands or in our cities and towns. It isn't just about planting and counting trees. It's about stewarding our forests and creating those ecosystems, the biodiversity that we need. It's as critical as planting.
Brilliant. And we've got a kind of couple follow-on questions from that, I think, actually. I'm going to sort of combine two questions. Mike Downs has asked how much of the budgets are used to provide aftercare. And Michael Richardson has asked a tricky little question, as Michael will do, given the opportunity. Of the 500 million trees planted, how many are alive and how many of them are alive and thriving? We all understand that aftercare is just as important as planting. What's the Arbor Day Foundation doing from that side of things?
So on the first question about the aftercare, so when I only speak for the Arbor Day Foundation, when we're working with partners in cities and towns to plant trees, we always, and if we are funding those trees, we always provide dollars for 2 or 3 years of maintenance, depending on what the city's standard is. And we challenge them to think about how are they watering for it, how are they stewarding for it, making sure it's being cared for. And then also long-term, how is the city managing it? In our traditional forest restoration work, all the different partners we work with have a little bit different modeling. Sometimes they have opportunity to provide aftercare, sometimes they don't. But then also when we're doing verified forestry carbon projects, we are guaranteeing a permanence. We have to guarantee additionality. Those trees are audited every single year. So there's a whole different level of rigor. So that's the first question. The second question on those 500 million trees, I can 100% guarantee you they don't all live. Not all the trees I planted in my backyard have lived, unfortunately. But that's not really the point. Our point is we're trying to push ambition, push aspiration, but we're also trying to make sure that people know what we're creating is forests. And we plant a lot of trees in natural forest lands that don't survive, but many of them thrive, and that's just how it works. In cities and towns, we'd love to see every single tree survive. That's not the way it works, as you all know. So maintenance is key. Maintenance is critical. We try and provide funding for maintenance to help make sure the trees we're a part of. And we push cities, utilities, and other campuses and others we work with to make sure they've got their maintenance plans also, and make sure they work with professional arborists every chance they get.
Absolutely. All about the professional arborist. One of the main things we push here at the association. Right, let's go. We've got a couple more questions. We've got a bit of time. Ben has made an observation and a question that in the Paris riots about 14 years ago, it was found that the treed areas suffered less damage and disruption than those areas without trees. Is that something you found happens in the USA? I guess this is connected to green equity, perhaps, and that distribution of greenery.
I've heard that was not aware of that from the Paris riots, but I've heard and seen research that talks about how tree-lined communities create a more engaged neighborhood. They encourage people to be outside and thus connect more with each other, have more buy-in to protecting their community, protecting their neighbors. There's lots of research out there that talks about how trees and tree-lined communities boost increased shopping, do boost safety, reductions in crime, increased education performance, the whole laundry list. I had not heard about the Paris example, though.
Thank you. Yeah, good question there. Someone's asking, how do you earn ISACUs? I'm going to give you a code. I'm going to give it to you later. So you're just going to have to wait. Right. That is not a question for Dan. That's a question for me. Okay. What was I looking at there? Susan is asking. Susan's watching from Jordan. Welcome, Susan. Thank you for joining us. Susan's asking if there's any members of any Middle East countries involved in the Arbor Day Foundation work.
Yes, we are planting some in the Middle East, and we have, I could not tell you, if you go to treecitiesoftheworld.org, you will find, I believe, a couple of cities from the Middle East who have engaged, but we're talking with our partners at the United Nations Food and Ag Organization about how we can engage some folks in the Middle East as well. Yeah. And we would love to have somebody from Jordan, part of the Tree Cities of the World program.
Brilliant. There you go, Susan. You can have a look online, and then I'm sure you can, as Dan said, you're on Twitter, and there's various other ways to get hold of you as well in there. So we have had a question from anonymous attendee asking if the Arbor Day Foundation plants timber bamboos. Do you get involved in planting bamboo at all?
We don't. To my knowledge, and I could be wrong over the last 50 years, maybe we've done some of that, but I don't think we're doing any timber bamboo.
I didn't think you would. But I asked a question. We've got a question from a name that's coming up as Dell Laptop. Now, either that's the type of laptop you're using, or that is an unusual name, and congratulations to your parents. But the question is, do you have a project in England? Now, obviously, Charlotte's going to be talking a bit about some Arbor Day stuff in England, but you mentioned Trees for Cities. What has been your involvement in England to date, Dan?
So we've done a lot of work with Woodland Trust, doing planting with, again, so what we don't do, we don't go into a city, we don't go into a country or a city as the Arbor Day Foundation, parachute in and say, hey, here's what you should do. Because we don't know. We find local partners like Charlotte, who knows what to do where she lives, Woodland Trust, Trees for Cities, other great partners like that, who understand what the needs are in a community, what to plant, where to plant, how to maintain those trees. And then we look to find either financial resources or other kinds of resources to support that work. And so it's been traditional reforestation work, and now more and more urban and community forestry work.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dan. That sounds like a very wise approach. There's a couple more questions. I mean, I don't know if there's anything that caught your eye in the Q&A or any other comments, but that's most
I
of
have
the ones
not looked at
directly
it.
at you.
I get so distracted by that, I haven't even looked at it. So I'm trusting your judgment, John.
I try not to get too distracted myself. But well, there's one question here from Paul. Paul's asking about, and this is almost more of a personal question about, so Paul's asking about, have you looked into the folklore for stories about trees and the religious affiliations, for example, in the Norse pantheon? Are you interested in all that kind of stuff? We've got a whole webinar from Chris next week, which is going to talk about that. But I suppose, let me twist the question around a bit. You know, you get very involved, as many of us do, with the ecosystem services and everything, but to what extent is that cultural and the sort of almost spiritual thing important to you and to your work?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's easy to get caught up in the science, but as I kind of shared my own personal tree story, one of the really inspiring things is the historical connections, the religious connections, the family connections, just how trees have had such an impact over the years and continue to have such an emotional impact on people. And that's a part of what the Arbor Day Foundation loves to help celebrate and foster those connections, because we are not the tree experts. Like we are not a arboricultural association. That's not who we are. And we know we're not perfect. And that's why we try and work with partners who have expertise in other ways, whether that is understanding the history and the folklore, or whether it is the technical aspects, and then connect those dots.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. All about the local knowledge. Well, Dan, I think that's pretty much it. I reckon we've squeezed out the last drop from you before you can go off and do another talk.
Well, I appreciate it. I honestly do. I look forward to getting back to the UK sometime soon and visiting with some of you in person. And I really want to say a big thank you to Charlotte, who's going to speak next. But thanks, Charlotte, for your leadership. We're proud to get to work with you even just a little bit. And thanks for everything you're doing. And thank you, John, for everything you're doing at Arboricultural Association.
Thank you so much, Dan. Very much appreciated. A big round of applause, everyone, I'm sure, from where they are. Brilliant. Thank you. Okay.
Happy holidays.
Yes, indeed. And you have a marvelous Christmas and all that. Brilliant. Thank you. We've got lots of little clappy things in hearts floating around the screen. I've not seen that before. Is that a new feature on Zoom, or is that just everyone loves Dan? Wow.
I'll take it. Take care, everybody.
I'm going to tell them they're doing it for me. Thank you, Dan. Okay, so I'm going to do the CEU code at the end, because otherwise you're just going to grab it and run and go and watch the football that starts in 20 minutes, and we can't have that. Before we get on to the final presentation, I've got a little announcement to make, which involves our next guest. Each year, the Arboricultural Association presents 3 awards to deserving folk. We have the Arboricultural Association Award, which this year was won by Andy Summerley. We've got the Young Arboricultural Professional of the Year Award, sponsored by Nicholson's Lockhart Garrett, which was jointly won this year by Greg Packman and Samuel Dudley. And we have the Best ARB Student of the Year Award, sponsored by Tree Life, and this year won by Charlotte Bancroft. Charlotte has won a cash prize from Tree Life, which I have no doubt will be spent on educational things like the Arbor Association bookshop and serious, sensible stuff like that. Free entry to one day of the Arboricultural Association conference. And most importantly, this certificate right here, which in a way that we haven't practiced, Charlotte, I'm going to pass on one direction of my camera and you're going to receive it magically like this. Oh, look, that was perfect. Seamless. Charlotte, congratulations. Very, very well deserved. And what's absolutely lovely is not only following on from Dan's presentation to show what you've been doing in the UK, also obviously this work relates directly to your award as well. So very well deserved. And please, over to you for your presentation.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Thanks for that. Right, I'll just pop on and share my screen just a second. Okay, hopefully you can hear me. I'm hoping this is working and I'm talking away and I'm talking to people and not just myself. I can't see my face now. Okay, so I'm Charlotte Bancroft and I'm here today to talk to you about what I've been doing in the UK for Arbor Day UK. So Arbor Day UK is about to celebrate its 4th year. So we're going to discuss a little bit about what's been going on here and the activities I've been taking part in, and what we've got planned for this year. Also a little bit about the people that have been involved, our sponsors and supporters, and hopefully a little bit about the future of Arbor Day UK as well. So Arbor Day came to UK 4 years ago. I'm sure some of you may be aware of a wonderful tutor that works at Myerscough College and does many things for the arboricultural community, knowledge being the main one. Duncan Slater spoke to some students in his class one day, and they were talking about the Arbor Day Foundation, and asked if any of the students would be interested in taking part in an Arbor Day. And I think pretty much everyone in the class put their hands up. Now, I wasn't there at that time, that was before my time. But since then, Duncan and the team of Arbor Day UK been working tirelessly, planting trees, making connections with the community, and really what it's all been about from the start is about celebration and representation of the arboricultural industry. And hopefully one day we might have that day that they have in other countries to celebrate all the plantings and all the people involved as well. So what is Arbor Day? Well, what is it? It's about recognising all the achievements of the past year, all the work that people have been putting in, all these wonderful volunteers that are out there planting the trees and greening up our environment. It's about recognising them and looking back on what we've achieved, and about looking forward to what we can do in the next year, and just raising everybody up. So again, talking about celebrating achievements, I might have just talked about that already. This picture here is a local primary school. This was one of the activities that I was involved in this year for my project, my industry project at Myerscough College. Part of the project was to highlight arboriculture, and through that I did some tree planting at schools, and part of this was about celebrating the achievements that we'd done and letting everybody know what was going on in the UK. And it's about showing people that there are positive things going on, especially children who seem to be suffering through climate anxiety. I know I've spoken to quite a few of the children at the primary schools that I've been doing some planting with, and they've expressed it's something that they are worrying about. And when they do see that there's planting happening, there's activities going on, it certainly does make them feel much better. And they can get involved too. Bear with me. So it's about sharing experiences as well, not just the physical planting itself, not just the celebration of the planting, look at all the trees that I've planted, but it's also about sharing feelings. A lot of the children, when the activities were taking place, they were, as this chap says, they were buzzing. They were asking so many questions. They were outside, they were enjoying themselves. They were feeling like they were doing something. They were feeling like they were involved. And that is what we want. And we share the activities on newsletters, through media, blogs, word of mouth. Was talking about it with all the other primary schools in the area, and everybody was getting involved. It was on Twitter. It was really good to see everybody sharing their experiences. A huge focus of it was on education. I really wanted to make sure that the plantings that we were doing, so it was in 10 primary schools, the plantings that we were doing were done right, and it was the right tree in the right place and for the right reasons, and to make sure that everybody knew why we were doing it, and why not to plant the tree too deep, and how to prepare a tree pit, all these things that are really important, part of education around trees. Sorry about that. Lost the sharing. Bear with me 1 second. Is everybody still there? Sorry about that. It's always a technical glitch to to get over. I actually can't see myself, so I wasn't sure if there's anybody listening, but I will carry on. This is my first time, so please be kind on the old webinar. So massive focus on preparation and aftercare, which I'll talk a little bit about further on here. And a little bit about this as well, which about civic pride as well, and about stewardship. A lot of the children that I was working with, the teachers, the community that got involved, they all took pride in their local areas. And as you can see from these pictures here, they're just some pictures from my locale as a child here. I shan't divulge who that is, but they were really upset when we came across these trees. And I know we're not going to stop vandalism. We're not going to stop all this by getting young people involved in planting trees, but it can go some way to helping. I think if people are taking pride in their area, I planted that tree, you know, I think that really can help. But I won't go too down that avenue because there's a lot more.
Charlotte, for some reason we've lost your slides.
Just me talking, is it?
Well, I was trying to sort it out from this end and then that didn't work. So I thought I'd better jump in. Sorry, we lost your slides.
Oh dear.
You're all right. Don't worry about it.
I'm here, but let's have a look. I shall
You're
start
here.
again.
We can hear you, and everything was perfect up until a couple of slides ago, I reckon.
I'll try again. Apologies, everybody. Right, 1 second.
That's quite all right. It's free, Charlotte. They're paying nothing. They're what they expect.
I know, they want the money back, wouldn't they? Hang on.
Well, they're welcome to it. Anyone who doesn't like it can email me.
Oh, right. Okay, I'm going to go for it again. Just 1 second, everyone.
Yeah, no worries.
Right. How's that?
That is the one. Perfect. Sorry to interrupt you.
No worries. Hope I've not missed a slide now. I've skipped along, and I'm hoping I've not missed what I was talking about. Bear with me. Okay, civic pride, we've moved on from that slide. I'm not going to say that I know all the answers to that about vandalism, but it is a huge bugbear of mine, and I really do hope that the more people we engage in the benefits of trees and how to protect them, how to plant them properly, I'm hoping that everyone will join in, and maybe that will ease off slightly. Industry representation. Now, when I started my project, it was an industry project as part of my course at ISAC College, and we were to start a project that we were passionate about, something that we were interested in. And to me, how I actually came about doing this course, when I actually heard about arboriculture and thought, wow, this is something I could do. This is a career. Wow, fantastic. Sign me up. And here I am. But to represent the industry, you know, there's a lot of people that you'll speak to and they'll say, what is arboriculture? You know, they'll ask you what you're doing and you'll say, oh, I'm studying arboriculture. And they'll always say, what's arboriculture? And obviously that's what I probably said about 3 years ago. But it's to represent the industry, not only so people understand what it is, but to understand the work that we do as well and how important that work is. To get more people interested so that we will have a greater army of people to protect and plant this urban forest, these trees and woodlands that we need in this climate crisis. You know, there's a lot of talk about improving canopy cover. We just don't have the people to do it. And the more people that know about arboriculture, the better. So part of this project was really to get the word out about the industry itself and how fantastic it is. There's some wonderful people that work in it, and there's such a variety of jobs out there, and careers, should I say, not jobs. So hopefully this would spread the word a little further about this too. Okay, so activities so far. Trying not to ramble now, but there's been a lot of activity and I cannot say that I have been doing all of that activity. Mine is just a small amount. So as I say, this is going to be the 4th year that Arbor Day UK has been celebrated, and it's been held at ISAC College. Wonderful place with some very passionate people. Duncan Slater did start off Arbor Day in the UK, and also with Marco is in there. Sharon was helping us out in the first couple of years as well, to push the project forward and to get some more people involved. There's been some amazing activity gone on over the years. The first picture at the bottom was one of the first plantings at Sequoia. Fantastic turnout. We've planted at schools, we've planted at colleges, we've planted within the communities, with local authorities. Businesses have been involved, and as you can see from those smiley faces at the top, lots of children have been involved in this year, which is fantastic. But throughout all of the activities, it's been amazing to see and to hear about how everybody collaborated so much, pulling everybody in to help out, wheeling mulch, transporting trees, everybody got behind it. And even more so over the past couple of years, with much more talk about having to improve the canopy cover. So I couldn't really tell you about every single activity that's gone on because there's been far too much, but we have 4 woodlands at Myerscough College, thanks to Dr. Duncan Slater and his tireless work there. He's always out there prepping sites, planting trees, drumming up more interest. He's out at primary schools. And Marco as well is doing some fantastic work down south with colleges and schools and getting more people interested. So I'll do a little bit about my project. I've already told you quite a bit of information about it, but it was 10 schools and it was 10 trees, different trees. And it was a variety of schools as well. And each school I went to, we got different groups in, so different ages, different abilities. Each tree was selected to fit that site. Some of the schools were actually involved in the process of choosing their tree, which was fantastic. Actually returned to my high school, which was really, really nice to do. And their eco team were tasked with the challenge of choosing between a selection of trees that I gave them, and then they were looking at sites. So they looked to see which tree would suit which site. And that was really good, to empower them and to get them involved in that decision. So it got them thinking about why that tree, why that site for the right reasons. So there was lots of learning going on. We went straight from pit planting to, you can see there in the middle, this chap was getting involved. They all want to hammer the stakes in. That's the best job ever. And also about the importance of mulching these trees. So giving them the tools to be able to go away, like some of them said, so we could go home and we can plant some trees with our family. So yes, that would be amazing if that was going to be happening. And if these children are having that knowledge, one child asked me at primary school, she must have been about 8 years old, and she said, what if we plant it too deep? Amazing question. That's the best question. We need to see those root flares. We need to see that part of the tree, because that's a big problem with trees not establishing. So there was lots of learning. It was fantastic. There was lots of questions asked, but it was over the course of 4 months. I visited some fantastic schools, all really enthusiastic students, enthusiastic teachers. It was really great to see. And one of those schools in particular is going to be taking part in some activities for the next planting season, which has just begun. And as I mentioned before, the planting really was about inclusivity, because for the project, my project, and I think for Arbor Day itself as well in the UK, it's about everybody being involved. We don't want anybody left out. We don't want it to be, any kind of elitist activity. You've got to be a part of a special group. We want all children and everybody to be involved, whatever their age, their ability, their beliefs. Trees are for everybody. And yeah, really, we just don't want anybody to be left out. So the project that I did, we pushed forward with the Queen's Green Canopy as well. All the trees that were planted were added to the Queen's Green Canopy, and they supported us with this project as well, which was fantastic, because it's been a real big project for the UK, and that's been pushed through to the end of March. So there's still a chance for anybody planting trees to get involved in that and to map their trees on the Queen's Green Canopy. It's a great initiative, and it's really just it's helped push forward our message really to improve the canopy and get some more trees planted. So that wasn't a bad thing at all. That was a really great thing to be involved in. Arbor Day UK this year. Well, this was at the college the other week, and you can see some very eager faces there. There's lots of activity going on. So a new woodland is due to be planted at Myerscough, which is going to be called Booth's Wood, and that's going to be planted by the employee of Booth's Supermarket. So they have purchased these trees, and this woodland's going to be planted on site in the new year. And alongside that also is Queen's Coppice. Sorry, I should go back. Booth's Wood, 175-year anniversary. 175-year anniversary, so fantastic. And that's what we're going to commemorate for that as well. The Queen's Coppice is going to be planted near to this. This is a fantastic opportunity. We're going to plant some hazel, and that's going to be done with a primary school that I actually worked with on the project that I've just discussed previously for the tree planting last year. This primary school in Blackpool was so excited. They really wanted to be involved in any new projects that we were doing through Arbor Day. So we've got some funding through some sponsors who I'll move on to afterwards. And with that, we're purchasing some hazel. I'm going to plant this fantastic coppice area that's going to be worked. And the children are really excited to do that. So in the new year, we've got 15 students around about, I think they're 8 or 9 years old, coming to plant this coppice. So really looking forward to doing that. We've got a tree planting in Blackpool as well with the mayor of Blackpool. That's really exciting too, at Stanley Park. Lots more hedges, lots more living fences. If anybody's followed Duncan Slater on LinkedIn, you'll see he is a big fan of living fences. So he's been planting some willow whips and just fantastic. He's already done a few on site, and that's going to be extended further. So we've got community planting, we've got lots of planting at ISAC, and some more school planting as well. So there's lots of things coming up. And here he is. He won't probably thank me for putting that on. And it's the only picture that I could actually find of him because he doesn't like to be on photographs. But this is a primary school recently that Duncan Slater planted. Here he is up at the top with the students. And for all intents and purposes, he had the most fantastic day. And all the children always do. They love being outside. They love being part of these initiatives. And they just ask so many questions. They just do. It's fantastic to see. So any projects that anybody can get involved in to do with planting trees in primary schools with children, just you won't regret it. It's just such a wonderful experience. And yeah, there's many more of that coming. Marco is our southern contingent of Arbor Day UK. He has tirelessly planted trees at some fantastic places down south in Hampshire. And he's always there thinking of new ways, new initiatives, people that we can connect with to get involved. He's done some planting last year, and also he's doing some planting this year with Winchester College. You can see those lovely smiley faces in the centre. I think it was 175 trees on that planting, and then another 125. And also at the Shealing Special Education Trust, he's been really enjoying the activities that he's been doing down south, and he's got many more planned for the next season. The Arbor Day celebrations are held at ISAC campus. It's a great place, and with part of the celebrations, we also have a careers day, and I've viewed 3 of those career days. This is the 3rd one now, and it really is just a great event. As you can see, John Parker is going to be speaking for us this year, or to us, with us, joining in, and it's going to be physical. So for the past 2 years, due to COVID, it wasn't. So it was all online, and it is always a little bit less personal and less interactive. So we're all really excited to have this event on the 8th of February at our campus. We've got some great speakers coming in. They're going to be talking to us about our theme this year is a bit similar to what we try and do with Arbor Days, not just to celebrate trees and planting trees and the people that are planting these trees, these tireless volunteers, which is another great interest of mine, but also just why arboriculture, why is it so important, why do we need it? And in the afternoon, we're going to be having some great speakers that are going to be talking to our students about careers in arboriculture. So I'm pretty sure that there's going to be some excited people to attend that event and to reach out to potential employers as well. So that's really great. Looking forward to that in February. Sponsors and supporters. We've had some great support over the past few years, and this year is no exception. As you can see, some great names up there who are getting behind us, helping us, providing us with some trees to plant around and the projects that we're doing, and just showing that they're with us and they support us. And
Charlotte, I think
It'll grow.
we've just lost your sound. I don't know what's happened there. I wasn't sure if it was just me, so I waited a second and then I saw a comment on the chat. It was literally the last 10 seconds.
Oh no.
No, it's literally, yeah, that's fine. You're perfect. It was literally 5 seconds or so, and now you're back. Although now we've lost your PowerPoint.
Oh gosh, I'm not doing so well here, am I?
You're doing
Right.
absolutely fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay, I'll go again.
Go again. It's not a
I'm
problem
nearly
at all.
finished now, and you can all go and watch the football.
No, none of them want to watch a football.
I'm sure they do.
They've got to
I'm
wait
sure.
for this CEU code now. This is a great
Oh gosh,
thing. We
I'll
can
make
hang
it
over
wait.
people.
Right, okay. Just
So don't worry about that. Perfect. We're back on.
We're back on. So yeah, you missed my lovely, beautiful slide of the countryside, but really it was about what was going to talk about was reflection, is reflecting on what we've done over the past year. You know, there's so many people out there. This is a huge passion of mine. Volunteers. You know, people talk about planted trees and how we need to plant trees and you know, enhance our canopy cover, urban forestry, you know, all these wonderful groups, the Woodland Trust. These are all volunteers. You know, there's so many people out there that are tirelessly spending their time and energy and effort in planting trees and supporting us to improve this canopy. And it's really about reflecting on them, what they've been doing as well, and reflecting on what we've achieved over the past year, and hopefully giving us a bit of a direction of where we can go next as well, which is really this slide I'm on now, is get in touch. You know, we have a hashtag, Arbor Day UK. A lot of the projects that the work I was involved in, I shared on LinkedIn. So if you wanted to check out what I've been up to on there, you could see some of the planting that we've done. Duncan's wealth of information on his, and also Marco's, you'll see what he's been up to. And just for anybody that's getting involved in any tree planting over this season, you know, join us in February to celebrate. You know, tag on for Arbor Day UK. What we would really like eventually is that there's a day to celebrate trees and the people that are planting these trees, and just to push forward the importance of what we're doing. Yeah, and that's where I'd like to go. And there's a little link just under there, which is actually a great resource. The Arboricultural Association Young Tree Guide to Establishment. All the schools received this from me. They had also, don't forget to water your trees over the summer, which is really important because establishment is key. And that's about empowering people to understand, you know, the importance of watering these trees and not just walking away when they've finished. Yeah, it's about getting it right. And following up on these plantings to make sure that these trees grow and improve our canopy cover. I think I've talked enough now. I'm starting to ramble a little bit there, but there we go. And there's some references and resources on there. If you do share these slides, there's a great link there to TDAG, to the species selection as well. That's quite helpful. And some other links on there as well, if anybody is interested. Thank you.
Charlotte, that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. Really, really good.
Thank you.
You were worried about that? Why were you worried?
I was so worried about it because there's so much to say, and there's so many people that have been like working behind the scenes, you know, doing some amazing things. Mine was a small snippet, and I was conscious not to twitter too much about that. But it was great. It was great to be able to follow on from Dan and all the amazing things they've been doing. And I just hope that, you know, other people can get behind what we've been doing and celebrate with us and push forward for Arbor Day in the UK.
Absolutely. Dan was just your warm-up act. Don't worry about that. He's gone now. He's busy with other conferences and he's moved on. He's moved on from us now. Okay, that was brilliant. And we've got loads and loads of questions. We don't normally actually have this many questions, I got to tell you. So we're going to work through the ones we have got. You mentioned, and you can read the chat later on, but don't get your head too big because everyone's loving the work and loving the presentation. Now, where am I looking? Okay, so you mentioned the fact that people were given the Young Tree Establishment document, which is wonderful because that's one of ours. And it ties into a good question from Sarah asking what sort of follow-up there is with the school tree planting. Do you go back? I know it was quite recently, but you're obviously setting them up to look after these trees. Are you going to go back and find out how those trees are doing?
Yeah, I mean, a big part of, I should have mentioned that, to be honest, because I was thinking it earlier when we were talking and Dan had done his talk, and I thought, yeah, because that's a big focus for us is follow up. I mean, I know Duncan has been and visited his schools. He's great, like he's fantastic. He's been out, he's checked on them. If there's any trees that haven't survived, he's replaced them. You know, we get the Woodland Trust packs, you know, like a lot of the schools do, and we've replaced some of those trees. He does a lot of free work. I'm due to go out and visit my trees. It'll be, you know, in the new year. I'll go back. It'll have been a year since they've been. But it's about, I think it's about empowering people as well, to give them the information, and not just, I'm not just saying, ta-ra, I've done it, I'll see you later. You know, I will follow up, we'll send that information out. Please don't forget to water these trees, you know. Make sure you don't trim them to death. That's a big bugbear. So yeah, we do follow up. Yeah.
Good to hear. Thank you. I just remembered, actually, I keep joking about, I'm going to forget to do this CEU code at the end. So I'm going to do it now.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to try and share it, because otherwise I forget. No expense spared. I've produced this document. Can you see that, Charlotte? I'm just testing. You're the only person I can see.
Yes.
So there we go. That is the CEU code. And obviously that's just a bonus. You came for the learning and the love, but you get a code as well, and you get points and all that sort of thing. And of course, points make prizes, I expect. So there you go. There's a CEU code. Get it while it's hot. I'll leave it up there while I do a question. We can do that, and then we can take it down afterwards. We've got, oh my goodness, we're getting more and more questions coming in. Susan's asked, this is more for me than Charlotte, can we share the presentations shown afterwards? Presentations will be on our website afterwards when we've had a chance to put them all together and all that sort of stuff. But you can always email me, john@trees.org.uk, and I can get in contact with our presenters if needs be to provide any particular bits of information. I'm going to stop sharing there now. There we go. If you missed it, you missed it. Entirely your fault. Let me get rid of that one. Right. A different Sarah. Sarah Kiss. Hi, Sarah. Nice to see you. Sarah's asking, are all of the trees donated or funded by sponsors? And could you perhaps briefly describe how people can get involved in that?
Yeah, well, it's been a range, really. I mean, we always get, Woodland Trust packs are fantastic. You know, we encourage the schools to get involved with them as well when we go out to source funding wherever they can to get their own trees, and sort of give them the information to be doing that in the background, because although we can go out and we can sort of help them plant those trees, we want them to be able to carry on doing that year after year. Funding comes through from our sponsors, so like any charity, so it's a not-for-profit, you know, we're there to advocate for trees and to plant as many as we can. So once we get funding in from our wonderful sponsors, then we allocate that to projects in and around the local area, and also where Marco is doing some planting there. So the primary schools, that was funded by the Arbor Day Association. That was fantastic. And again, say booths of planting this woodland at Myesco. So it is free funding. So I suppose it's just about, you know, looking about, seeing what funding is out there, the Woodland Trust, and seeing what you can do in your local area, and just sort of it ripples out further then, you know, if everybody gets involved. Yeah, we just keep expanding further. Does that answer it?
That makes perfect sense. And as you're talking about sort of a wider geographical scope, we've had 3 different questions or comments really asking if there's any projects like the one you're doing going on in other areas. So Chris is asking about Gloucestershire, Joseph's asking about Surrey, Drew's asking about Nottingham. Obviously, you've been working in a relatively sort of limited area, understandably. Do you know of any other kind of projects going on that people could hook up with?
I mean, I could probably do some digging, but I know that some of the work that we've been doing, Marco mentioned earlier, he's been doing some work in Hampshire. So he's a great contact down south. So I'm sure he would be more than happy to sort of look at projects around and about that area. But really sort of, I suppose if people start searching, Woodland Trust, again, and just a great one, but local ones, I think that really what we'd like to do is expand Arbor Day further and get more people sort of saying, oh, well, we'd like to do that as well. You know, we'll do some work in our area. But Arbor Day itself hasn't expanded that far yet. We're in Hampshire, but not much further yet.
And maybe this is possibly a bit of a plug for the Arbor Association, but I'll make it anyway. We did create a new schools membership, and we created it and introduced it at the end of 2019, and then COVID happened, so everything got a bit thrown off. But it's a free membership for any school can sign up to, and the idea is that we'll send them resources and anything they need, and hopefully develop resources with them. But what we'd really like to get to the point of doing is all of our members out there, and all of our branch networks and all of our different wonderful people we've got all over the country and all over the world sort of take your example really and do something locally to them. You don't need to go around every school in the country. We don't need to. There's people out there.
There's so many people out there, John, and it's like the more I find out about these activities that are going on and the scale of what people are doing, in their free spare time, the effort that they put in, to probably just nip back to that question about you saying other groups. I'm looking at volunteers at the moment, and when you do a local search, you might want to start looking at sort of friends of groups. There's so many people out there that have their own little pockets of activity going on. I know there's one for Stanley Park near us, so there's like a Friends of Stanley Park. These groups are always looking for volunteers, always. They'll have some funds and some budgets in place where they can look at, you can shout out, we've got an area that needs some tree planting in the local area. We've got this plot of land that needs some trees, and perhaps they can direct you in the right, point you in the right direction and perhaps get involved in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've started, the Arbor Association started sort of attending careers fairs and things like that, and getting out there and trying to talk to people at schools. I'm going off on my own little ramble now, but sorry, I can. I can just do it. But we're not often historically when we go out and speak to younger people about getting into arboriculture, we tend to do it when they're already maybe at a land-based college or something. They know they want to do something outdoorsy perhaps, and we're trying to say, well, do arboriculture. We've got to get into those younger groups so that they know that trees is an option for them. Do you find when you're working with these children, do any of them have any idea that they could have a career in trees?
No, not really. I mean, I suppose for us, because of the work that I've been doing in my locality, it is quite rural. Myesco, is a land-based college surrounded by lots of farms. So there are people that will have a little bit more of an idea about the college and what goes on there. But a lot of the children I've spoken to, even some of those rural areas, that the word itself, arboriculture, is always a bit of a, they'll say what? So we'll go through, well, arbor means trees. We'll talk about it in that respect, and we'll say, so what do you do? And a lot of them have asked me, what kind of jobs can we do with trees? Children love being outside, most children, and to seize the opportunity when these children are so young, to show them and to point them in the right direction. It's just, it's an exciting feeling to think we could get out there and we could inspire some of these kids to take up this career. It's just so fantastic. There's so many different careers that you could different directions you could go with it. So while they're young.
Yeah, completely. We often get annoyed that no primary school child has ever said, when I grow up, I want to be an arboriculturalist. And we maybe need to think about why that is, whether it's the word or the concept or the awareness, but there's definitely a blockage there. Right. Anyway, sorry, that's my little rant. They're here to listen to you, not to me. Oh, can you hear me? Can other people hear me? Oh, I'm seeing little thumbs waving. Charlotte, can you hear me?
It was just me, clearly.
That's fine. No, it's not a problem. I often just get an existential crisis, and I wonder if I'm just speaking to my laptop, but I'm not on this occasion. Right, where did I see a question that I really, really, really like? Sharon's always got a good question. Hi, Sharon. Sharon said, brilliant presentation, Charlotte. What could us ARBs learn from the children taking part in planting?
Oh, well, I mean, I don't want to be too cheesy and say, fresh eyes, but they really are. We tend to sort of go through our lives and we get to our adult stages thinking a certain way and perhaps overthinking things. And I think that they really just take it back to the basics, like the questions they were asking, well, what if that happens? What if we plant it too deep? What'll happen? And why are we putting these protectors on the trees? And they're asking all the questions about, are there any rabbits nearby? They're just inquisitive minds. And I suppose it's just about looking at things sometimes a little bit more simply. I mean, obviously we need the science behind what we do as well, but just about why we're doing it. Why does that tree need to be there? Who's it for? Who's going to benefit from it? Who's going to look after it? These are all the questions that the children were asking. So they seem to have the right idea.
I think it would be, in my experience, it'd be great if some professional tree planters asked that kind of question as well. So that's brilliant. One question, we've had a question from Nigel about fruit tree planting and food security, which I'm going to slightly kind of hijack that question and ask whether you've done much stuff with orchards and fruit trees and encouraging growing food, that part of it.
I haven't, but it definitely is an interest of mine. I mean, we've touched on with some of the modules that we've been doing recently, because I'm in the third year at the moment, and we've talked a little bit about sort of agroforestry. So that was quite interesting, and talking about how we can sort of grow fruit trees with the cover. But when it comes to orchards, it is quite interesting, because when you drive around, I don't know if anybody notices, you'll sort of see apple trees, that have been planted in, all best intentions by people. And there's a lot of fruit that just doesn't seem to get used. And I think it's just about a bit more education with people, getting these fruit trees in areas and saying to people, you can actually eat these apples. Some people say to me, what, you can eat those? I'll say, well, they're apples. What, you can eat them, they're edible? And I'm saying, yes, they are. It's not a tiny little sour crab apple, but it's just more about education. Let's plant these fruit trees where people can access them and actually let them know that it's okay for them to take them.
No, definitely. There's certainly a disconnect in there between people generally and where their food comes from and all that sort of thing. Right, where are we? We've got several more questions. Paul has asked another good question about the fact that in the UK, the learning medium for children is often very theoretical and quite book heavy. It often lacks hands-on learning, such as tree planting, which obviously is good for all children, but some children particularly need that rather than focusing on the theory and the book learning. How do you, without trying to ask you to solve the education system, how do you think we can encourage this to be adopted a bit more widely? How can we get tree planting and maintenance and that kind of care into schools more widely?
Well, I think there are already some projects going on. Some of the local primary schools I've worked with, I think there's sort of like, they do sort of eco schools. There's different tree sort of planting initiatives that schools can get involved in. And the more they take on, the more activities they get involved in. They can sort of earn stamps for the school. They get sort of a star rating. I could find out actually, and perhaps we could send that information, but they could look into it. So there's many of these initiatives out there, but I have found that, I suppose for myself as well, looking back, why did I not know about this when I was younger? Why, any time spent outside with these children, all the teachers have said, yes, they learn so much. You can talk about, you can do measurements while you're out there. They do mini surveys on site. What trees have we got? There's maths. You can involve anything, science and maths in outdoor learning. So yeah, the more the better. But I'm pretty sure there's quite a few initiatives for schools out there to get involved in. Where they can do much more of the outdoor learning, where the resources are provided.
And a few people mentioning forest schools in the chat as well. Of course, we've got a great network of forest schools in the UK.
Fantastic. I've actually, somebody I know works for a forest school, and it's just like a joy. She's like a joy every time she works.
And the RFS have also done some great stuff with Teaching Trees initiative. We had a good Teaching Trees coordinator in Gloucestershire as well. So yeah, again, getting children outside, learning about trees and all the stuff you can do with them. So yeah. Okay, what have we got? One from Emma. How do you use the CEU code? I believe you go onto the ISA website and record the CEU code against whatever it is you've got to show the ISA. That's not really my department, I'm afraid. I just gabble on for ages. But if you want to email me, john@trees.org.uk, I will put you in contact with somebody a bit more knowledgeable than I am. I am now looking for another question I saw. Bumpty dumpty dum. Someone asked, here we are. Mike has asked, he said it's great to see so many children involved, but should we also be actively engaging more with the growing older populations who may have time on their hands and perhaps need to get out and do stuff and have an interest to leave a legacy? Obviously, you couldn't do it all with your project, but have you got any thoughts or any experience of different kinds of outreach programs?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I've done a bit of volunteer work with some sort of local organisations, the Wyre Rivers Trust, and a lot of the people that are there. I mean, I'm there when I'm maybe a day off college, and I've got a free day and I can get some exercise and get outside. But the majority of the people they're retired. They are people, a lot that have, well, I'll say the spare time on their hands, but there are some really passionate people out there. And I think if we could direct a lot more of people that are, perhaps they've cut down to part-time or they are retired, and could get involved in some of these planting initiatives, fantastic, because, they really are the lifeblood of this voluntary tree planting. The majority of the people out there are, older people helping in the background tirelessly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to give a special mention of Duncan Slater at some point. I didn't mean to follow on from older people working tirelessly, because that's definitely not Duncan. But
get you for that.
you did mention Duncan a couple of times, and he doesn't normally get a great fanfare for these things, but Duncan Slater is wonderful and is marvelous and does so much stuff.
He does.
And it's great to see his involvement and how he's brought Arbor Day over here.
Oh yeah, I mean it's his brainchild really. I mean he didn't want me to focus too much on him. I know he doesn't, because he said, no, this is your project and you're doing this, don't want to talk about me. But yeah, fantastic. He's there always pushing for people to get involved. He's out there in all weathers. It's just tireless really, and he's really, I mean, we're so lucky to have him as a tutor at MySco, because you just glean so much information from him. You go on his LinkedIn page and everybody sees, he comes, sometimes you just think, wow, yeah, I didn't think about it that way. But yeah, as a tutor, it's just great. You go out for walks with him, in class sessions, and he just points things out which you couldn't take from a textbook. So yeah, all that experience that he's got, that he's imparting on us. So hopefully one day I'll be able to impart some knowledge on some people.
You've imparted some knowledge tonight, so don't worry about that. Duncan was also one of my tutors, and I don't impart any knowledge at all,
yes.
But he's still great. Right, where are the questions? We got a few minutes left. Loretta's asked a question, whether or not you know if there's similar projects continuing to be developed after you have finished your project. And I guess, you're doing some really great work, and it's part of your research and your studying and everything. When you finish, is that it? Are you encouraging more people to come forward? Has there been interest locally in carrying on your work?
Well, really, I mean, I sort of took it upon myself to sort of join in, really. When I heard they were doing an Arbor Day at the college and I wanted to do a project, I just thought, oh, what a great idea. Just let's tell more people about it. Let's get more trees planted and spread the word about arboriculture. And it sort of rolled from there. And then I thought, well, yeah, I could just keep doing this, to be honest. I really want to stay and help out and continue to get people involved. And I'd like other students to also start doing that. I haven't whipped any of them into shape yet, but there's plenty of other students at MySco which could take the reins and could help out. Any students, be great just to take up the initiative.
And what's what's your next project after you've done this? What are you thinking that far ahead, or?
Well, next project for study, my dissertation is the next thing. So that's I'm working on that at the moment, but it's about volunteers, which I'm quite passionate about, you might have guessed, and about finding out about their role really in tree planting. And the England Tree Action Plan is asking all local authorities to produce a tree strategy, and in this strategy they lay out the foundation of what they want to achieve, how they're going to improve their canopy cover in their area. And it's about making partnerships with local groups, like the partnerships that I mentioned before, the friends of groups, making connections with them and working with them to improve things. I think I've gone on a tangent. Oh, volunteers. Yeah. They're just there. They're just doing all this work. And I want to find out if it's working well, these partnerships, and just to get an idea of what's happening. And are they taking part in tree establishment? This is a big one. So we talked about before and about giving people the information about how they can continue to look after their trees after they've gone in the ground. But all these volunteers that are out there spending hours in the rain, hail, all weathers planting trees, and then often then they're not it's not perhaps taken up for them to come back and maintain them. I know some projects will, but it's about seeing if that can be something that we can facilitate a bit more. Tree warden schemes, fantastic. There's another fantastic group out there. But yeah, that's the next project, is to find out what's going on.
Very interesting. Will you come back and do a webinar for us when you've got some research to update us on?
Possibly. If everybody replies, and once I send out this survey in the new year, and I get some decent data, I can have a look at that. But yeah, that would be great.
Brilliant. Of course you will. Look, I think we will leave it there. It's just 25 past. We've still got some more questions. If I didn't ask Charlotte your question, or Dan your question earlier on, what we always do is we send off all of our question list and we send the chat to our speakers so that they can have a little look through. If you're desperate to know the answer to a question, then please email me, john@trees.org.uk. And whilst I won't be able to answer your question, I'll be able to pass it on to someone who can. So Charlotte, thank you so much for that. That was really absolutely brilliant. And thank you to Dan, Idam Sentia. You were both wonderful. Thank you to all of you watching, because you're all marvelous and I love you all and it's great to see you. We've got 25 countries just said hello in the chat, and we had, where are we on? Definitely 5 continents, and it never ceases to amaze me how far this reaches. So that's really exciting. Thank you all for being part of it. Adam's asking, right, so Adam, all right, Adam, I'm going to have to put you on the spot now because someone's legitimately asked the question. What we did for quite a while was asked our presenters what their favorite tree related book was. And because I put quite a few, and I'm saying this and now I'm going to gabble a bit so you've got time to think. That's what I'm doing. It's like a showbiz thing, folks. Because sometimes we put people on the spot and then they felt a bit, they weren't sure. I started sometimes asking people in advance, and I completely forgot to tell you in advance. And now I've bought enough time to say to you, Charlotte, what is your favorite tree related book?
Well, I kind of thought this might crop up. So I do have a couple of books with me. Although I want to say that there's so many books out there, and I'm just at the beginning of my learning journey. There's so many books. I couldn't possibly just say that's the one. But I do have a book that I want to show you, which is what I actually found. I shouldn't say I found it in a charity shop, but I did. I was walking and I found it, and I like buying books. And this was before I started at ISAC. This is before I wanted to change my whole career and just work with trees. And I saw this book, and it's called Remarkable Trees of the World. And I just couldn't put it down. I mean, you talked before about children and when you're younger, and I think Dan mentioned it, there's always some story about a tree. And I had plenty of those as a kid. And when I started reading this book, it just, it was very inspiring. And the other one is this, just quickly, it's for kids. And somebody else showed this on one of the other webinars, Last Tree in the City. It's fab. It's just really great for kids. It just shows, it's like almost a before and after, just very quickly. I know you all want to go now, but I've just got to show you how lovely this is. So this is the city, minus the greenery, quite grey. And the story ends with this lovely chap that's inspired all these people to plant lots of trees and green up the city. And it's just great for kids.
That is 2 very good recommendations there. And well done for being prepared. And I forgot to ask the question. And where are we? Thank you, Adam, for reminding me of the question. Brilliant. Thank you, Charlotte. And everybody, I hope you will sign up for next week when we've got Chris Knappman, which is genuinely, it's going to be great with Chris. I know it is. I know that because I sat in a beer garden with Chris and he showed me almost the entire presentation and I was captivated, and you will be too. So that's going to be great next week. And then, of course, plenty more webinars coming up that you can sign up to. But what a fantastic start to our winter series. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Charlotte. It's been great. Thank you, Andrew, for helping behind the scenes. And thank you to all of you wonderful people out there. Stay safe. And I really look forward to seeing you next week or tomorrow at the webinar about farms I'm doing, which I put a link to in the chat. Just a little plug there. But anyway, see you next week. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.